All right, let's look at the third game in the big complex linear set, and let's see what we can do with this game. Uh, what they will tell us is that there's 8 physics students, 4 majors, I guess physics majors, Frank, Gwen, Henry, and Joan, and then 4 non-majors, Victor, Wanda, Xavier, and Yvette. So to save time, I put those 8 students already in the box at the top left under students, and I'm keeping track of which ones are majors and which ones are non-majors, as you can see. And this is a good practice for advanced linear games. If you'll notice on my setup over here and over here, I put on one line the majors and the other line the non-majors. Now, I can't just assume that that's how it's going to go, but when I look at the first rule, it says exactly 1 major is assigned to each bench, and there's going to be 2 students assigned to each bench. So one of them is going to be a major, but I need to put another student there, so that means there's going to be exactly 1 non-major as well. And that's why I'm able to divide up the line. So I'm like, okay, well, like this is bench 1, right? And in bench 1, there's 1 space and then a second space. And they told me that one of the spaces is going to go for a major, going to be filled by a major. So I know automatically that one of the spaces is also going to be filled by a non-major. So this is bench 1, here's the space for the non-major, here's a space for the major. When they allow you to do this, and therefore allow you to know that the set of people who are going to be on this top line are going to be majors, and the set of people who are going to be on this bottom line are going to be non-majors. Of course, you could reverse that, it makes no difference. Then you really should write those variables who are going to go on each line next to that line so that you don't get mixed up. It might sound like something very obvious, and it is, but you would be surprised at the number of people, even people who are good at the games, who occasionally make a mistake, and they start to put the F down here, and then they realize afterwards that they were supposed to put the F up here, and then they have to erase it and start over, and it creates a big problem. So the best thing to do really is just remind yourself basically of that, the fact that in this particular game, the majors are going to go over here and the non-majors are going to go over here. Okay, let's keep it moving. So we are on to the rules, and we already looked at the first rule, so let's look at the second one. Frank and Joan are assigned to consecutively numbered benches, with Frank assigned to a lower numbered bench. Okay, so this rule by itself just says that Frank is going to go right before Joan, and he's on a lower number bench, which means that he's going to come to the left of Joan, right? And we can just draw a box around that. Okay. Make this a little bigger so people can see. So we know that that's what it's going to look like for Frank and Joan. And you'll notice Frank and Joan are both majors. So I can draw it exactly on the same line because this block over here, is literally what Frank and Joan are going to look like. There's going to be Frank, and then on the very next bench there's going to be Joan. So let's look at the next rule. It says Frank is assigned to the same bench as Victor. Okay, so if I were to write this rule by itself, then it would look like this, right? And Frank is going to be assigned to the same bench as Victor, which means that he's going to be in a vertical column with Victor, right? So that, like, for example, if Frank was here on bench 1, then Victor would be here in the non-majors category for bench 1. Okay, so this is what it would look like. And you can leave it just like that if you want, but you may have already noticed that this rule fits very nicely with the previous rule, which said Frank comes immediately before Joan. So if we want, we could combine the two rules. Let me just make this a little bit, so I'm going to get rid of this. You could keep it if you wanted, but me personally, I'm going to get rid of it. Don't need this rule anymore because I can just add it in to this rule. And I can say that Victor is going to go there. I need to make sure it lines up, but it's going to look like this, okay? And who's going to go here? We don't know. But there is going to be somebody there, and it's going to be a non-major, and it's not going to be Victor. So there really are only 3 possibilities. It's W, X, or Y. I'm not going to bother to write that in there, but so we have a block that looks like this. And whenever you get a block like that looks like that, that is really a blessing. It makes your game much, much easier because, there's only 8 spaces and here's a block that takes up 4 of them. So that's going to be a big part of this game. Okay? And finally, the last rule says that Gwen is not assigned to the same bench as Wanda. Okay? Gwen is not assigned to the same bench as Wanda. So that basically says that wherever we put Gwen, who's a major, we're not going to be able to put Wanda, right? So this can't happen. As opposed to the previous block, which was something that had to happen, this block actually, right, cannot happen. So we just want to be like, this is impossible. Okay? And so this is what we call a block, a not block, right? It shows us what cannot happen. And normally the block, this one, will be much more important in terms of the initial analysis. And then this block telling us what kind of block cannot appear will come in towards the end of the analysis. Okay, so let's see if there's any, because we've done all the rules. So let's see if there's any other anything else that we can figure out. Some of you may be thinking about the FJV block and thinking about templates. And because it's a big block, that's not a bad idea, right? So I'm happy if that crossed your mind, if you thought about it. When we think about it a little bit further though, we're like, okay, F could go in 1, which would put J in 2, and V would go under F. That would be one possibility, but then F could go in 2 and F could go in 3 as well. So there's really like 3 templates. And the question to ask yourself when you're deciding whether to draw those templates out individually is, if I put the F in 1, for example, would I be able to figure anything else out apart from, putting the J and the V in their respective places? Would I be able to figure anything else out about the variables not involved in that block? And I think the answer here is no. So that's the reason that I'm not going to bother to draw the templates, but I will say that and again, the reason is that you're not able to figure anything else, you're not able to figure anything new out by deciding where to put the FJV. The other variables not involved in that block are basically not affected enough so that we're able to put them down exactly. And we're not even able to put any of them down exactly as far as I can tell. So that's the reason I'm not going to draw them. But if you did draw them, it wouldn't take that long. And it would at least put those 3 possibilities in front of you. And at worst, you would waste 10, 20 seconds. Whenever you're not sure if you should draw templates or not, my advice would be to draw them, because along the lines of what I was just saying, you might waste 10 or 20 seconds if they turn out not to be useful. But if they do turn out to be useful, if it is a game where, one of the main elements was to do templates, then you'll really benefit by doing them. So the upside is so big that if you're not sure, you should just do them, right? So we said with the templates don't turn out to be that useful, but just to be complete, we should write in here that F, okay, F cannot go there. I should make that bigger. F cannot go here. We know that, right? And we also know that that means that V cannot go here. Okay, so that's a not law. Or that's a place where the V cannot go. And then we know that the J cannot go here. Okay, and I know that you all know this. This comes from the block. All right, that's it. That's all we're really able to do. So that would be our setup. And, we can draw a box around this to try to keep things neat and call this our setup. And that's about it for the setup. Now, we would like, normally this makes us feel a little bit, or at least me, it makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable not having more in my setup. But the thing is that if I look at the questions on this game, okay, a lot of them, the last, well, 23 and 24, sorry, looking at the wrong game, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are all if questions. So in those cases, they're going to give us more information, and we can then use that information, make deductions, and get the answers. And 1 and 7 are both list questions. 1 is a straightforward list question where they put everybody on the board and ask you which one is acceptable. And 7 is a partial list question where they give you the seedings for 2 and 4 and ask you which of those seedings are acceptable. So 1 and 7 we'll be able to do like we do list questions, and 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 they're going to give us extra information for every one of those, so we'll have something to start our analysis with. And then again, the reason that I'm saying that is because you might worry that you haven't done enough on the setup, uh, and that is a legitimate worry sometimes. But if you look at the questions and there's a lot of if questions or a lot of questions that you could answer without having figured something out up front, then you feel a little bit more comfortable. And I think that's the situation in this game. We're not supposed to figure all that much out up front. We really rely on the questions to sort of drive the analysis. All right, so I'm going to end this video, and in the next video we'll do the questions. Okay.